You would not notice him at first. Alan Howe looks like hundreds of others in this winter of polar vortices and record snowfalls. With each step, the snow squeaks under his boots, ker-chunk, ker-chunk. He moves down the sidewalk, shoulders slightly hunched over, pushing his shovel like a plow. In the Chicago metro area, Alan is one of thousands of people shoveling their walks. In the city of big shoulders, Alan is too small to notice. Alan was born in Washington, D.C. in 1942 while his father was working in the Pentagon. After the war, Alan's family moved to Southern California, and his father earned a small fortune in the citrus industry. Alan went to Stanford. He graduated in 1963. Here's the puzzle I want to explore. In 1963, Alan could have had his choice of careers. His family was connected to both the military and the business community. The world lay open before him. The path was smooth and well paved. He came from what we now call privilege. Whatever misgivings we may have about how privilege is distributed in our society, we all wish individually we had it. But Alan's life is not the story of cashing in on privilege. Neither is it the story of choices gone bad. Alan's life reflects a series of deliberate choices about what the good life looks like. When you approach a major transition in your life, how do you decide what to do? Do you know whether the thing that looks really big is really big? What if that small thing is really the big thing? Who can point you to the things that are really big? I want to describe how Alan made two choices, and I want to see what we might learn from them. So what is Alan's story? Why is this 72-year-old man shoveling snow in Chicago in 2014? Alan's story took a definitive turn on a weekend retreat. In the early 1960s, the war in Vietnam was still ramping up. In this context, making sense of right and wrong was not merely academic. So while a college student at Stanford, Alan took a retreat for the purpose of reading through the Gospels. He would have read the parable of this mustard seed that we also just read. We aren't given a context for this parable in Matthew, but we can connect the dots. We can imagine that a few years earlier, his mother, the one who had found favor in the sight of the Lord, the one who probably taught him how to first listen to the Lord, sat him down and asked, "Jesus, what are you going to do with your life? You aren't a kid anymore. You've got to grow up. Take responsibility." But what Jesus actually did was not what his mother had in mind. Jesus likely faced criticism that his newly established Fishermen's Solidarity Union appeared small and unimpressive. It would never amount to anything. He wasn't trying to get married. He wasn't settling down. He wasn't aiming for the top. He wasn't aiming for the middle. So Jesus' family, friends, and enemies asked difficult questions. What is this 30-year-old man doing? What is his story? Is he crazy? Has he lost his mind? In response to such questions, Jesus said that a mustard seed is the smallest of seeds, but it grows to a large tree that provides refuge for birds. This is actually not a promising parable for discernment. It says that while we're looking for something else, the fruits of God appear as if out of nowhere. It says that sometimes the community that initially introduced you to God misses it. It tells you that you still aren't relieved of responsibility for what God has shown you. So Alan went on retreat, and he read the Gospels, this passage and others, to see if there is something his home community had not seen. And there he found a God who reestablishes community with us and with all creation while we were yet God's enemies. Alan concluded that one cannot both follow Jesus and advocate violent solutions to problems. Not the problems of the world, not the problems of the country, not the problems of a family, and not the problems of an individual. It seems like such a small thing, What difference does it make if one 21-year-old college senior in 1963 thinks violence is bad? It's not even controversial. If Alan's realization had remained only theoretical, it would have made no difference. But when Alan started to act on this realization, to order his practice to nonviolence, he began to pay a price, and the small seed began to grow. Alan's family would have been happy for him to aim for the top or even for the middle. Alan could have had a promising career in the most powerful military in the history of this planet. Instead, he filed for and received conscientious objector status. This is no small thing for a man raised with a strong military tradition. He knew his family would misunderstand him. What is his story? Is he crazy? Has he lost his mind? The community that had initially introduced Alan to God could not see that God's work might run counter to key aspects of their identity, and this created a break. So Alan gave up family and houses and fields. He became a bird without a nest. As a conscientious objector, Alan began his alternative service in June of 1963. He moved to a small church in Chicago where he found a different community. The church was intergenerational, interracial, and because it focused on living with the poor, it cut across socioeconomic boundaries. Members shared meals, money, and living quarters. They shared daily conversations about life, its joys, its pains, and the experience of aching need. From expressions of need came a realignment of resources. The common table was the basis for a common purse. This church was a tree in which many birds of the air found nests. Soon after Alan arrived, he was given the job of organizing a bus trip to a march on Washington that was happening in August. It was a heady start in dizzying times, but it was also what needed to be done. In January, winter rolled around, and Alan found what it meant to trade pleasant winters in Pasadena for the winter winds of the Midwest. But with the same determination with which he organized the bus trip in August, he set himself to clearing sidewalks of snow. Alan did not and does not just shovel snow in front of his own house. He walks around the entire block shoveling snow, and then he moves to the next block and the next. He shovels the walks that connect everyone who lives in the community. It's what needs to be done. Seasons of warmth and cold come to every community. Precipitation from the past doesn't always bring new life. Sometimes it gets stuck or frozen in place, and the corridors that once connected the community become barriers that divide the community. Every community needs people who can see what needs to be done, whether the task is great or small, and whether the doer is great or small. God cares about walks getting shoveled. It's no small thing. It's God's work. That's how Alan started shoveling walks. Alan had committed to alternative service in Chicago for 2 years. In 1965, he could have gone back to California and re-entered a life oriented toward the pursuit of money and prestige, but he chose to stay. Something had taken root in him, and his life grew. So he went to graduate school, and in 1978, he completed a PhD in New Testament. He had offers to make a career as a professor. Again, he needed to choose. But how? And this is a different story of discernment. Here, the relevant facts would seem straightforward, and I'm not going to tick them off, but let's just say an academic career could be big. Staying in his community would look like a choice to stay small. But by this time, Alan had been living in community for 15 years, and he had learned to ask a different set of questions. Practices like sharing food, shelter, money, and practices like reconciling with your enemy teach their practitioners that God can show up anywhere and in anyone. If God is at work in Jesus, and if that work reconciles God and the world, where exactly is that happening? Will I best live into that work if I leave my community and follow a job? Or should I commit to this community and let the job take care of itself? Could I be part of God's work more effectively in an academic community or in an intentional Christian community? We need to spend a little time on this distinction between academic community and Christian community. It's easy to confuse or conflate the two at a college that calls itself Christian. But if we conflate academic community with Christian community, we will get an academic view of the Christian faith. Christianity will be a set of beliefs we must defend in an academic arena. In turn, students will learn that what it means to be Christian is to defend Christian beliefs. Augustine saw this danger. He recognized a startling similarity between the philosophy of Plotinus and the Gospel of John. God is being, truth, goodness, beauty. Perhaps Plotinus is even a theist. What more could a Christian ask from a philosopher? But then Augustine turns. He sees that Plotinus denies what is crucial. Christianity insists that this same God also becomes flesh, takes the form of a servant, is humbled to the point of death, and does it all in the name of love. These things he did not find in the books of the Platonists. If we confuse academic community with Christianity, our Christian life will be distorted. We will worship an intellectualized God who sits at the top of an ontological or epistemological hierarchy. We will think that academic work is the most important, for through our work, God draws the world closer to an orbit around God. Our communities will imitate the characteristics of our God, who insists on being at the top of the pyramid. But this is not the God revealed by Jesus, nor the community established by Jesus. God is our model of humility in that God takes and gives flesh. Those who are most godlike are not the most powerful or knowledgeable, but the most self-giving. If you serve this God, writing articles might be good work, but so is shoveling snow. To be clear, I'm not arguing for a separation between academic and Christian communities, only for their distinction. The choice Alan faced was a real choice. And it could be a real choice only because Alan had been formed by both academic communities and Christian communities. So, should Alan pursue the best job and hope to find a community there? Or should he prioritize community and hope to find a job worthy of his pursuits? Alan and his wife Jean did not simply decide by themselves. The community came around them to help them discern. But in the end, the decision was still their own. Here's how Alan assesses the situation 35 years later. The world has an awful lot of New Testament professors. I think that the world needs more Christian communities that take the life and teachings of Jesus seriously. Otherwise said, Christian community is doing what needs to be done. But to see what needs to be done right now actually requires a long training of the eyes. And that training of the eyes is largely a function of a training in practices. So Alan gave up possible careers in the military, in business, and in the academy to be part of a small planting. The Stanford Cardinal is not going to put Alan on their website to advertise what you can do with a Stanford education. But you would have the wrong idea if you think these choices were costly, depressing, or unfulfilling. On the contrary, Alan has gained more than he ever gave up. He has started numerous businesses, both for-profit and not-for-profit. He sits on several boards of directors, both here and in other countries. Alan started and chaired the North Shore Peace Initiative. And he draws on his academic training regularly to teach classes. Most important, he has been a son and a brother and a father to hundreds of people. Friends, God is busy all around us. What God is doing may look imperceptibly small, and choosing it may look risky. But the promise of God is that God will meet you there, and you will find brothers and sisters who will walk with you on the way. After 50 winters, Alan still shovels snow. When the snows come, he pulls on his boots, takes hold of his shovel, and makes straight paths. For people just making their way to their jobs, his long labor is impossible to bring into focus. But there is a cardinal in the branches overhead, making a nest in the tree, and it announces God's pleasure. Cheer, cheer, cheer. May the words of my mouth